Hello and welcome. You are now looking at the welcome screen from the Quicken personal financial software being used on the desktop. And you'll notice on the welcome screen that if you have an older version, you'll be asked by Quicken in order to create a new ID. There used to be a time when this software was actually owned by a company called Intuit, and the differences are worth talking about. In the 2016 edition, Quicken was actually owned by the company Intuit, and the software ran on Windows and the Mac. You may notice that the 2017 edition is no longer being advertised as being owned by Intuit. In fact, if you were to go and purchase that edition now, you may not be able to find it. One of the other differences that you may note is that in 2017, Quicken had a separate edition for those who owned rental property. And this was actually run as a separate version of Quicken, and someone would have had to purchase that edition in order to get the conveniences of the menus and the categories. However, as of the recording of this video, Quicken is now a subscription service. And you'll notice that you would be able to go to the Quicken website, you would be able to purchase Quicken, home, business, and rental property all in one unit, and you'd be able to purchase by downloading this particular package. The reason for this is that Intuit actually sold the Quicken software to a private equity firm in 2016. That meant then that the company that has always been very closely related to it, Intuit, which actually owns the software TurboTax and QuickBooks, as well as the Mint website, continues to run as a separate entity and separate from Quicken. This is why, depending on which version that you actually have, you may be asked to recreate an ID in order to get started using your desktop software. Now, if that's the case and you have trouble with this process, you'll notice that there is a support number at the bottom of the page, but you can go ahead and get started by creating a new Quicken ID even if you have an Intuit ID already. Once you have created your ID, you will be asked to sign in to the software, and we will do that right now. Now, one final step that you'll be asked to take is you'll be asked to enter, if you have one, an Intuit ID. Now, again, if you don't have one, then you won't need to actually go through this process, but if you have a previous ID that you created with Intuit, maybe you used TurboTax, or maybe you used a previous version of Quicken, you'll need to have that ID ready in order to place into this password box. Now, when you place that password, you'll be asked to create a new password for the Quicken Vault. And so once you create your password, then you'll click OK. Now, one aspect of the process is that you will then be able to set up your mobile application in order to sync with what you're doing on your desktop with Quicken. And in order to do that, you'll need to go through a step on this page, and then you'll click Next. Once you've completed this password process, you will then be ready to start using Quicken. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now, in order to keep your business and home finances organized with Quicken, you'll need to note what Quicken does and how long it will do it for you. Now, one of the things that you'll note is that the Quicken Home and Business subscription actually does and is made for separating and categorizing your business expenses, tracking your profit and loss deductions, as well as running your tax statements for your tax professional. Now, what's important to note is Quicken's discontinuation policy in terms of how long they'll be supporting some previous versions of Quicken. And you'll want to make sure that you take a look at your version of Quicken and that you'll note when Quicken will discontinue support for that edition. Obviously, if you purchase their subscription product, it will always be in force as long as your subscription is paid. So if you intend to download some of the information that you'll be getting from online billers into Quicken, this is an important feature of the subscription service that Quicken keeps updated. And as you go forward, you may want to consider the subscription service just for this feature alone. It is a more automated feature than if you're using one of the earlier versions. Of course, as is the case with everything, it is worth having a conversation with your tax professional if this will make things easier for you to deliver to them in order to complete your taxes. However, for keeping track of where your business is versus your personal finances every day, Quicken can be a good way of being able to see at a glance what you have available. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk briefly about navigating Quicken and some of the features that you're going to find as you use the software. Now, if you go to the File command, you're going to notice that you can actually open a new Quicken file or one that is existing. You can actually copy your Quicken file, and this is the file that you're creating as you enter data. You can set a password for your data file in case someone else is using your PC. You don't want to have anyone else who is altering your data. And then you can be a little more specific and you can set a password for those who would have access to the account, but you don't want them to be able to modify transactions. You can actually back up your Quicken file, and it's actually a good practice to do this every time that you use the software. Before you close, you should actually back up what you have done. And you can actually restore from a backup. So if you have a backup file that you have created, your software isn't working, you can go to your backup file and actually restore what you have done in your work. You can import a file into Quicken, and so there are several areas that you can import data. You can import data from TurboTax and Microsoft Money, as well as previous versions of Quicken. You can export your file. So for example, if you want to use QuickBooks or some other financial software, you can actually do that using the file export command. You have several options of file operations. You can actually put together a year-end copy or a copy of your file, and then all of the other features you'll note would be the same in any other program. Now, one thing that you do want to be aware of is where your file is located on your personal computer. Typically, it's going to be in your Documents folder, but you want to be able to find this folder at will. And if you want to actually back up that file to a cloud drive, you want to be able to find it so that you'll be able to do that. Now, in keeping your finances organized, one of the things that you'll want to do is you'll want to be able to create reports that will tell you certain things when you want to know them based on specific dates. And Quicken can actually do that for you in terms of your banking, in terms of doing comparison, what your balances are, comparing them to where they were some previous period, spending, your taxes, your business, and this will be of particular interest to you if you're trying to keep your personal and your business separate. You'll be able to look at your business at a glance using these reports, and we will actually be focused on these reports in this course. You can actually look at those reports in terms of graphs if you want to do something that's a little more visual. And then they actually have options for you to be able to work with your credit score. So Quicken is actually a way for you to be able to organize your financial activity so that you'll be able to keep your personal life separate from the business and then be able to make good decisions about your business. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now, one of the first things we're going to do to get started is we're going to go to the File command. And as you recall, what we want to do is we want to set the password for the data file. And that means then that only someone with the password can actually use the data file that we're going to be inputting data into. Now, when we click the link, we are given an option to set the custom password. We're going to do that. And then we're going to go ahead and write that password in this dialog box. Now, you do have the option of using the data file without a password, but it's always a good safety measure to actually go ahead and create a password that you are going to remember with the data file. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to click OK. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to the File command. We are then going to set a password to modify transactions, and this is going to give you the ability to make sure that someone who has access to your Quicken account cannot go back and modify transactions. And this means then that you will make sure that your transactions, as you place them in, the software will remain the same. For example, if someone is using the account with you, you don't want them to be able to go back and manipulate transactions in order to change information, in order to reflect something that really did not happen. So we're going to go ahead and click the Set Password to Modify Transactions. Okay, now once we've done that, we're going to click OK. We're now going to back up our file, and we're going to go to the Backup command. Then we're going to click Backup Quicken File. And we're going to be given some information about the file. It's going to be where we designate it. Now we can actually change the directory where we want this backup to be placed, and then we will then click the Backup Now button. And once you have that information, what you can do is you can actually take your backup and you can place it in your cloud drive, just so that you'll have a double measure of safety and security. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. We are now going to start adding data to our account to reflect our actual financial position. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the Tools area, and we're going to click Add an Account. Now typically the first thing we're going to enter will be our cash on hand. And so we want to go ahead and just click this cash button. And we're going to actually just write in here whatever we want to call the cash account. You can call it cash account or cash on hand. Now you will be able to add other cash accounts if there is more than one person who is working with this particular Quicken file. So for example, if you and a significant other are operating your business together, you can actually write in several cash on accounts. So what you can do in that case is just write in where this is. You can then designate primarily how the account is going to be used. And so what we can do is we can then say that this account is going to primarily be used for business, and then we can then click Next. Now typically your best practice is that you're going to start pulling reports. Now typically you're going to start pulling reports at the point at which you create your Quicken account. So you can write in the cash on hand that you have at the point at which you're creating the account. You can either go back in time or you can go back to the beginning of the month. So in this particular case, we're just going to assume that the cash on hand right now is $136. And once you've entered that number, you're then going to click Next. And then you'll have your first account ready inside of Quicken. Now let's say that you actually discover that you have more than $136 when you open the account, and you discover that you had $10 more and you had that $10 10 days before. So how would we handle that? We then want to look at our account page by going to this link. We then want to open up the business account. And then we want to click on Thomas's cash on hand. We then come to this account page. And what we want to do is we actually want to edit this amount. We want to change this to an earlier date. So we're actually going to change our opening balance as well as our opening date. So let's do that right now. We then go to this opening balance. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to click on the date. We're going to change this now to 10 days earlier, and we're going to walk this to the 5th. And then once we change that date, we are then going to click the Save button. And then we're saying that we're actually going to record a transfer back into the Save account. We're going to click Yes, Save Anyway. Now you'll note that because we're actually going back to change a password, it's going to require us to enter that password that we set up. So we're going to go ahead and put that password in. And then we're going to click OK. And you're going to notice then that the date has then changed to the 5th. What we're also going to do now is we're going to change the amount, and we're just going to click inside of the amount. We're going to write in the $10 more and make this now $146 that we started with on the 5th. We're going to click Save. And then Quicken is going to give us this warning message. We're going to click Yes. Again, because we are editing a transaction that has actually already occurred, we're going to be required to put that password in again. and we're going to click OK. And you'll notice now that we have changed our cash on hand to the day that we reflected. We know that we had $146. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. We are now going to add in a standard PayPal account. And so in order to do that, we're then going to go to the Tools menu. We're going to go and click Add an Account. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to click the checking account. We're then going to write in the name of our financial institution, and we're just going to write in PayPal. You'll notice then that you have your PayPal account there. You're then going to click PayPal. Quicken will then ask you for the name that you normally use to log into PayPal, as well as the password, and then you'll want to save this inside of Quicken. So you can go ahead and write in your login and password for PayPal. And once you've done that, you can click Save this password. You'll then be required to enter your Vault password. And then once you do that, you will then click the Connect button. Quicken will then start looking for your account at PayPal to begin looking for the transaction data. Quicken will then find this information. You can then designate how you want this to be classified. So for example, if you want to classify it as a savings account, you can do that, but typically you would classify it as a checking account. You can then choose as to whether or not you're going to have the data added. So you can actually choose not to download all of the data into Quicken. You will still have your account connected, and then at a point at which you designate, you can have your account transaction pulled into Quicken. But since what we're going to do is we're going to choose a point in time to create a financial statement, it's actually okay to go back and have data from the past added to your Quicken. So in most cases, you're going to leave this checked where it says Add to Quicken. We're going to write a nickname for that account, and we can actually edit that where it says nickname. And then we can designate how this account is primarily used. And so we're going to then click Business. And what this does is this actually will associate certain transactions with business related categories as they come across from Quicken. So what we're going to do now is we're now going to click the Next button. Quicken will then start adding the transaction data. You'll then see that your PayPal has then been added. You'll also note that it has been synced to the Quicken cloud, where you can also access from your mobile device. Once you've done that, you'll then click Finish. Quicken will then sync your data. You'll then get a message that your data has been synced to the cloud as well as to your account. Then PayPal and all the transactions typically that you've had over the last 90 days will then be entered into Quicken. And you will then have this data that you will have ready that you can start working with. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. We are now going to go through a step that you will be going through every time that you download transactions into your Quicken. You'll want to do it at the beginning when you first download transactions, and then you'll want to do it on a regular basis when you start bringing transactions over. And that is determining what category an event actually is. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to go through each transaction. And initially, this was going to be a lot of work when you first pull transactions over. Obviously, when you're doing less and you're doing this more frequently, it won't be as much work. So all you'll need to do is to come to the category area. When you notice a transaction, you will bring this drop down arrow, and then what you're going to do is you're going to determine what it actually is. If it is business income, you're going to click this link, and then you might determine that it is one of the categories that Quicken has already given you. However, what you could do is you could create a new category. And if that is the case, then what you're going to want to do is to click this blue button that says New Category. You're then going to write in the name of the category that you're going to be tracking. You'll determine if it is an income or an expense, and then you'll also determine if it is a subcategory. So maybe perhaps you already have an income category or an expense category, and you like for this new category to just be a subcategory of the one that's already there. That's the case. What you're going to do is you're going to click this button, and then you'll use the drop down arrow to find the subcategory. And Quicken has a list of those that are already embedded in the program. It's a good idea to write in a description of what this category actually is. And once you've determined what you're going to do, you're going to make sure that your descriptions are what they say they are. You briefly want to take a look at the tax reporting tab. Now, in general, when you are setting up these categories, you do want to check with your tax professional, since the reports you'll be using, you'll be passing on to them at the end of the year or at the point of a tax year. So as you determine what tax-related category you're going to determine this to be, make sure that you're checking with the person that's actually going to be working on your taxes. So once we've done that, we're going to click Save. What you're then going to do is you'll go through each transaction when you pull them over. And again, this is going to be the case as you do this on a regular basis. You're going to determine what the transaction actually is. So in the one case, everything on the deposit side will tend to be income transactions. Everything on the right side will be expense transactions. And again, you will be determining how you categorize these transactions. You want to try to be consistent so that when you start doing reports, you'll know what you are looking at. So for example, when you determine that there's a fee, you can just actually go and search for the category if you think it's already in Quicken. And when you do the search, Quicken will bring up a list of the fees or whatever it is that you are searching for that is available. And then you'll be able to just click the link to determine this to be something that's already there. So now once you've decided on an account's category, all you'll then need to do is then sync this to your Quicken account. And you can do that by going to the one-step update, and then you can just do a one-step update either of all your accounts or just the one that you are working on. In this particular case, this is the PayPal standard account. You'll get a warning notification from Quicken, and then you're going to click Update Now. Quicken will watch the progress, and your account is then updated, and you can click Close. So then you will have updated one entire account once you have actually brought transactions in. And you want to do this for every account that you bring over initially, and you'll also want to do this on a regular basis as you update the account. Now, obviously, you're going to be doing this more with your revenue accounts as well as your main expense accounts. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now, there are a couple of special scenarios to think about when you are going to add in a PayPal for Business account. So if you were to go to the Tools menu and you would click Add Account, and then you were going to add in another checking account, and you were going to add in another PayPal account. You'd click PayPal, and then Quicken will actually be looking for either the email address that you use to log into PayPal or your PayPal password. Now, in some cases, you might run into a scenario where your user ID will not be accepted by Quicken. When that's the case, you're going to get an error message from Quicken, typically because your email address may be too long in order to create the kind of PayPal ID that will be accepted by Quicken. And so what you'll need to do when you have a business PayPal account is to log into that account to create a PayPal user ID. You are then going to log in and go to the profile section. When you get to the profile section, you're going to go to this link that says My Settings. That's going to bring you to the settings area of your profile page. When you do that, you're going to click this update link where it says Manage Users. Once you're in that screen, you are then going to click Add User. And then you're going to create a user ID and password for the Quicken account that you're going to be using. Once you have all the data in, you're then going to click Continue. You'll then determine permissions, and typically what you're going to want to set up is a virtual agent that'll give you the ability to use this ID to schedule and download transaction history and run a settlement report. Once you've done that, you'll then click Continue. Once you've completed this, you can click Done, then you can then go back to Quicken. You're then going to use your new user ID as well as your new password. Once you've done that, you'll click Save this password, and then you'll click Connect. You will then have connected your PayPal for Business account. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. We are now going to go through the process of adding a bank account to our Quicken system. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Tools menu. We're going to go and add an account. And then what we're going to do is we're going to then click Checking. Now what you'll want to do is to search for your financial institution by name, and you can start by writing in that name into the search box. And once you have that name, what you're going to do then is you're then going to click Next. And then you'll be asked for your login and password from your online account. You'll then write that information in. You'll then click Save this password, and then you'll click Connect. And just as you did with PayPal, you will add in this information. And once you've determined the information correctly, you'll then click Next. Then you will have completed the process of adding your bank account. And you can add as many bank accounts as you like. You can add in bank accounts from significant others. Anything that is associated with your business that you spend money either for or from, you can add to your Quicken account. Once you've completed the addition of this new bank account, you're then going to click Finish. You'll then go through the same process that you used when going through PayPal. You will then look at each individual expense, and you'll determine if it is a business expense or a personal expense. And if it is a business expense, you will then change the category and determine how you want to categorize it on your financial statement. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now, in some cases, Quicken will actually guess as to what your categories are for a particular expense or income source. However, you will notice that on your home screen for Quicken, you'll typically be told that there are some uncategorized transactions. So whatever you haven't categorized and whatever Quicken did not guess to categorize, there will be a warning here that you have some transactions that you will want to then categorize. You can actually then click this button. What you can do then is you can click inside of each one of these transactions, and then you can actually use the drop down arrow, or you can create a new category. Once you've clicked the category, you'll then click Save. You'll be required to put in your transaction password. And then you'll notice that you now have 3 uncategorized transactions. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and categorize all of your transactions until you have taken care of everything in this screen. Now, once you've categorized all your expenses, whether or not you have categorized them based on what came over when you downloaded it or whether you entered it manually, you are then ready to start looking at reports to determine your financial position for your business. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Now, one of the things that Quicken Home and Business does is it actually mixes both the cash and accrual counting methods so that you'll be able to look at your business at a glance in a very simplified way. What that means then is we can take a look at payments that we know we're going to have to make based on our recurring patterns to be able to look at our cash position. So one of the things that we can do is we can actually go to this Tools menu. We can then go to this link that says Manage Bill and Income Reminders. And based on the information that Quicken has pulled over, it will try to guess about which payments you're making on a regular basis. And typically they will put them in a screen that gives you a couple of choices. And you'll notice these that you'll see here, that there are two, and you're looking at them here. So what we can do with these transactions is that we can actually do what's called scheduling. And when we schedule them, Quicken will actually place them on a calendar so that we'll know we have those payments that are going to be due, they're going to come out of our account, and then we'll be able to look at what's going to happen in the future. So what we'll do in this case is we will go to this area where it says action, and then we will click yes. And what we're saying yes to is we're saying yes, we want to schedule this in the future on our calendar. Now we can make any edits that we want to make inside of this screen. Most importantly, you'll notice that Quicken will remind us that this actually comes out of our account every 27th day of the month, and this was evident when the data was pulled over from your account. We'll note that it is from a particular PayPal account, and what we can do is we can actually add in the category that it's going to come out of every time. So we can actually do that in this bill reminder. When we do that, you're going to notice that we can actually write in the category, and we can use one that we've used previously, or we can create a new one as we have in other places. We can write a memo to ourselves. This memo is going to show up every month, and then we can actually tag it with some additional information. We can use tags that are already in place, or we can actually add a tag. Once we've written in the information we want for this recurring payment, we can actually click OK. Quicken will then have us tell it that we want to add a new tag. We'll click Save. Now we can actually add in data, and whenever you have the opportunity to add information, it's a good idea to add some of this information in when you have the opportunity and when you actually have the time. More information is typically going to be better than less when you're documenting what it is that you're actually doing. You can actually sync this to Outlook, and what this will do is this will remind you on your Outlook calendar that there's a payment that's going to be coming out of your account. If you were going to actually pay this out of your bill, or whether or not it's going to come out automatically, and you want to just make sure that you know that it's going to be coming out of your account. If you were actually going to be writing a check to pay this, you can actually do that with this particular box. So once we've completed this, we can then click the Done button. Once we've done that, we can then click the Enter button. Once we do that, we can actually enter this transaction into our register. We can determine how it's going to be paid. If it's going to be paid automatically, we can call this an EFT, and then we can click Enter Transaction. And when this transaction happens inside of our account and we pull this data over at that point in the month, Quicken will actually match the two transactions and will not double count it. So we can actually do the same with any of the other transactions that we have here. And we can do this in a way so that, again, when Quicken brings the information over, it will match the information that we're putting in, talking about transactions that will happen in the future. So let's go ahead and change this transaction. And when we'll do this, you'll notice that Quicken has made a guess as to what this is. And it's guessed that this is a home bill. We want to actually go ahead and change that category. I'm going to do that by changing this to a business expense. And we want to do that and change it to the proper expense. Once we've done that, we can then click Done. And then we can enter this transaction into the register. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. As you can see, once you have completed the initial setup, you'll need to do some work on a regular basis in order to maintain and manage your financial position in Quicken. And one of the things that you can do to make that easier is you can actually memorize certain payments and payees. And to do that, all you'll need to do is go to the Tools area, and then you'll need to go to the Memorize Payee list. Now, if you have certain payees and certain transactions that happen on a regular basis, what you can do is memorize them so they will always be placed into the same category when they come in. So, for example, what you can do is you can actually go to your list, find those payments that come in or those payments that you make on a regular basis, and then you can click the checkbox. Once you do that, you can then click the edit button. And then you can actually change the category to the one that you'll be using on a regular basis. You can actually tag the category and you can write in a memo. But what you're basically doing is you're memorizing this payee so that whenever it comes in, it goes to the same place every time to make it easier to manage. And of course, if this transaction comes over in some of those that you download from accounts, you can actually untick this button because you actually want to memorize the transaction as it comes. You're then going to click OK. You can actually place in a new payee by clicking the new payee button. And you're going to be memorizing this transaction whenever it comes in. Even if it doesn't come over from those you download, it comes in when someone actually pays you. If it happens on a regular basis, what you're doing is you are lessening the amount of manual work that you're going to be doing every time a payment is made. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. You are now looking at a PayPal receipt or something that was paid for most recently. And one of the things that Quicken can help you to do is to track these receipts and to keep them associated with transactions inside of the program. And so what you would do is you would take a receipt like this, which has come to you by email, and you would print it into a PDF document. And to do that, you would go to this print menu and click print. And the printer you would choose would be to save this document as a PDF. So instead of clicking print, you're actually going to click this save button. So you'd come back to your Quicken account, and what you'd do is you'd find the transaction that goes with that receipt. You'd go to the line item and you'd click this gear. When you get to the menu, you would then click attachments. Quicken would then give you this menu, and what you do is you go to this add button, pull the drop down, and then click add file. Once you find the file, you click this add button and then click open into the program. Now Quicken will allow you to attach PDFs, Word documents, and text documents. So once you actually have the document and it's there, you actually have some other options. You can actually export this document to another directory that you'd be keeping track of your receipts, you'd be backing them up, and then you'd be placing them in a cloud drive. You'd also be categorizing them and keeping track of them as you go. The benefit of doing this means that you will have all of this information organized for your tax time. And once you've completed the processing you want to do, you're then going to click done. Once you have that, you're then going to click the save button. You'll note then that inside of Quicken, you'll see the attachment. That means then that Quicken now has this receipt. It has been attached, and you now have a notation right next to the transaction where it actually happened. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. You are going to have cases where you have actually paid for something, and part of the purchase will be for business. The other part will be personal. Regardless, you can handle this in Quicken. What you can do is you can split the transaction once you have it in your register. And to do that, what you're going to do, we're going to go to this transaction right at the top. And what we're going to do is to go to the gear icon. And then we're going to click this link that says split. And when we get to that transaction, we're going to actually split the transaction into the proportions according to what's for business and what's for the certain category that we want it to be in. So for example, this transaction for $84.78, we could say that half of that was for business and half of that is for personal. So we're going to leave this one category as shopping and clothing. But we're just going to cut this in half now. So now we have $42.39 associated with a personal category. We're going to associate the second half of this to business. And we're going to associate this with the category that we think fits best. Now, just for the sake of this video, we're going to call this a miscellaneous expense, but it's a business expense, and so it'll get categorized into our business. And so what we've done is we basically split this transaction out between personal and business, 4239 and 4239. Now, what we could do is we could say that half of this transaction, 4239, is for business, yet it goes into a different category. So if that's the case, what we're going to do is we're going to split this in half again. So now we have 2119 as a miscellaneous expense. We're going to actually place this other half in office expenses. And so now we've split this out between your personal expense and two different expenses for business. And once we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to then click OK. And once we've done that, what we're going to do is click the Save button. We're then going to be required to enter our transaction password. And then our transaction, which first started as just a personal account, has now been properly allotted into personal and two different business categories. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. There will be times when you will make a purchase for your business when you have cash with you. If that's the case, you want to use your cash on hand account to track this purchase and make it part of your business accounting. So when you do that, what you would do is you would write in the payee. You would write a memo as to what that payment was about. So you just don't want to write in the payee. You do want to put in here what you actually purchased and why it is for your business. As you would with any transaction, you're going to determine the category. And then it's actually a good idea to attach the receipt. And so what you do here is you click this Add an Attachment button, and you would get the receipt from something either that you scanned or a file that you created. Now, if you had the file sent to your email, you can actually add the file. If you had the file scanned, you can actually get the scanned copy. Either way, you are going to add the receipt to this transaction. Once you do that, you're going to export this document to wherever it is you are tracking your receipts. And then you're going to click Done. Once you do this, you're going to write in the amount that you spent, and then you'll click the Save button. And what you've done is you've entered a full accounting of something that you've actually purchased for the business, as well as you've prepared yourself for tax time with a receipt that matches the actual transaction. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now, Quicken gives you a number of ways of monitoring the position of your business. If you look across the top tab and you were to look at Home, Spending, Bills, you can click the Business tab and you'll have a number of views right in front of you. However, if you've done a very good job of taking care of your recurring payments that will happen in the future, as well as the recurring payments that you have coming in terms of income, you will be able to look at a calendar to determine what your balance will be and when it will be at that level. To do that, you're going to go to the Tools menu, and then you're going to go to the Calendar box. The Calendar box will open up into a screen that will basically tell you what your expected balance will be and when it's expected to be. For example, you'll note that this recurring payment is something that will actually happen in the future, but it's something that we notated here present. And so because this recurring payment will actually come out, we can determine what our cash balance will be going forward, and we'll be able to look at this adjustment anytime that we want to based on the activity that is happening in our business. So once you look at this transaction calendar, what you'll want to do is you'll want to make sure that you add reminders into the register of any recurring payments that are going to happen in the future. And you want to do this for two reasons. First, you'll want to make sure that you're accounting for what will happen in the future. But second, you'll be able to make sure that if you have to move money between accounts, you'll know what's going to happen before it happens by looking at this calendar. And again, if you have been thorough in making sure that you note all of the recurring payments that will happen in the future, you can actually look forward to a future month to determine what your balances will be going into the future. And what this involves is making sure that you are notating recurring transactions on a regular basis. And of course, we can always go back and look at what the balance is exactly today. Now, when we look at this balance, $504 in this particular case, this is all of the balances for all of the cash that we have in all of our accounts. This isn't just one account. If we want to look at a particular account, we'll need to go into look at our account menu to see where the balances are today. Now, we can actually look at individual accounts by going to this options area, clicking select calendar accounts, and we can actually determine which accounts are going to be reflected in the calendar. We can make changes as we go. So for example, if we just wanted to only look at one account, we could actually do that. If we wanted to look at only two accounts, we could do that. So in most cases, we'll look at all accounts, but we can actually look individually at the balance as expected in an account by making adjustments to these accounts in this calendar window. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. By putting in the transactions and placing them in the right categories when they happen, we are now then able to look at reports that will accurately reflect where the business is, and we'll be able to answer the question, is our business profitable? And to do that, Quicken will give us a very easy way of being able to tell by going to the Reports tab, going to the Business section, and then pulling up the traditional profit and loss statement. When we pull up this statement, you're going to get a year-to-date number. What you'll want to do is you'll first want to look at the month-to-date number. This will be where you are right now in the month. You'll be able to look to find out if the business is profitable. In fact, if you look at your expenses and your income and something looks as if there is something that you need to investigate further, what you can do is you can actually hover over this particular line. You can actually click in to see what the line item is. You can actually click in even further to determine where these transactions actually were, what account they came out of, and then you can actually see the individual transaction and where they actually came from. So this is a good way of being able to analyze your expenses as well as your income. It's also a good practice to look at the past month to date. So you can actually look at last month, and you'll be able to tell and look at the previous 30 days to look to find out if you were profitable last month. And you can determine where your expenses are coming from by going to the line item, clicking in, and then you'll be able to actually click in even further by looking at these drop-down menus. You'll be able to tell where your larger expenses were. What you can also do is you can look at custom dates. You can look at the last 12 months, or you can look at a period, for example, between the middle of 2 months. You can actually look to find out where you're profitable and where you aren't. Although this data always resides in Quicken, what you can actually do is you can actually print the report, you can actually save it, and then place it into a file where you can back it up in another location. But remember, the key to a good financial statement is making sure that the details that you add in are correct when you categorize the expenses as you experience them. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now, one of the things that will often happen is that you will be out and about with your mobile device, and if you have the Quicken app enabled, you can actually enter a transaction as well as capture the receipt when you are actually experiencing the event. So for example, if we were to go into a particular account, and let's say that we are going to spend money from our cash on hand account, what we would do is we would actually enter the plus button, and then we would enter the amount of the transaction. Then we would choose a payee, wherever it was that we were. And once we enter the $21 and we enter the payee, we're then going to click Next. That's going to bring us to this screen. And what we're going to do now is we're going to click the camera button. And we're actually going to take a digital image of the receipt. So we're going to click this Take Photo button. We're actually going to, and we're just going to hover over this. This is just a sheet of paper, but it would be a receipt if you were doing it otherwise. We then click Use Photo. And it would then be part of our receipt. We would then click the Done button. And then the transaction would be added. And you'll notice then that our balance has been reduced by $21. And when we actually open up our desktop application, we'll notice that when the sync takes place, we will then see this reduction in balance right on our desktop account. And what we would do inside of Quicken is we go and we just sync to our Quicken cloud and click Update. Once we do that, we would return to the cash on hand account, and we'll notice our $21 purchase with an attachment, which is our receipt. And you'll notice our receipt purchase. So what you'd be able to do is to track your expenses while you are away from your personal computer. Enter them into Quicken through your mobile device. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to discuss how you can start tracking your business mileage using Quicken Home and Business. So if you go to the business section of Quicken, you will then see at the top right that there are certain business tools. And so if you pull this drop down menu, you'll see that there is a mileage tracker. You want to click that link. It's going to open up the vehicle mileage counter. And what you can do is you can actually track your mileage from any trip. Now, this mileage tracker does not exist on the mobile device. However, you can map the entire thing once you actually sit down at your computer. So every time that you take a trip, you'll want to make sure that you are marking in everything that you spent for your mileage as well as everything that you drove. Once you have all the information entered, you'll then click Enter Trip. Now there are other kinds of trips that you can track in Quicken, whether it's for charity, medical, your rental property, or any unreimbursed business. You will not be keeping track of your personal mileage. So every time you take a trip, you are going to want to write in the information, and you're going to enter it into the log. And if you are a United States taxpayer and you are working with your business to deduct mileage, you will need to have this log available for the taxing authorities. Now, if you have a log that you've been keeping already, you'll want to go back and enter it manually in order to reflect your keeping your log then in Quicken. But once you do that, on an ongoing basis, you want to come in every time that you've taken a trip, and you'll want to enter this information into the program. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in conclusion, you will have noticed that we have done a lot of syncing to the cloud with our data. And you may ask, is your data actually safe when this happens? And of course, the answer to that is that it depends. And if you were to side on the side of caution, you would say no. No data transfer is ever fully secure. So if you are uncomfortable with transferring your data and syncing it to the cloud, Quicken will work without doing so. And in order to do that, what you'll need to do is you'll need to go to your one-step settings, and you'll need to go to this drop-down arrow, and then you'll need to go to the one-step update, and you'll need to then click all accounts. That will then bring you to your one-step settings, and what you'll need to do then is you can either take out your sync to the Quicken cloud, and then the program will actually work without the sync. What you can also do is you can manage the accounts that you are actually syncing. And so you can do this by clicking Manage Accounts to Sync. You can then choose the accounts that you will actually have syncing to the cloud, so that the only data that you have will be data that you don't mind actually if this data would be stolen or if it were accessed in some way. What you'll need to do then is once you've done that, you'll need to click Update Accounts. Quicken will then give you a warning, and then you will click OK. Now you could decide that you want to sync those accounts again to the cloud so that you can use your mobile device. What you would do is click Manage Accounts to Sync, and then you would recheck the boxes that you want the accounts to be synced again with your mobile device. You'd click Update Accounts. What this means now is that these accounts can be synced, but they will not be part of the one-step updates. If you'd like them all to be part of the one-step update where you click one button and Quicken then syncs to the cloud, you can then click this button. Once you do that, you can then say Update Now. Quicken will then go through a process of making sure that the program knows that you want all of your accounts ready to be synced again, and then your data will be synced to the cloud. So you have total control over whether or not your data is going to be synced to the cloud in order to use your mobile device with it. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video.